Welcome back, deities, to a Smite 2 God Guide for Bacchus, the God of Wine.
It's party time!
Bacchus is a magical damage hybrid scaling melee tank with high lockdown and high damage potential. Bacchus has an auto attack chain of ×1 repeating. Bacchus' passive ability, Drunkometer. You gain strength, intelligence, and protections while drunk. Become tipsy at 30% drunk meter. Become smashed at 60% of your drunk meter, doubling the effects of this buff. You lose 2% of drunkenness every second. Bacchus' first ability, Chug, 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 Chug. Bacchus takes a drink, healing himself and becoming more drunk. You also gain increased strength and intelligence while taking a drink. Also, your next basic attack deals additional damage. This empowered basic attack lasts 6 seconds or until you hit a target, meaning you can be drunk and still get use out of this ability. Third also, this ability can be used without ever leveling the ability. However, the only use for it prior to putting a point into it is to get drunk. The empowered basic attack scales from your total protections. Bacchus' second ability, Belly Flop. Leap forward and slam into the ground, belly first, knocking up enemies in the area and dealing damage. If you're at least tipsy, enemies are also slowed after they land. The damage of this ability scales with your strength as well as your protections. For Bacchus' third ability, Belch of the Gods, I'll be reading mostly straight off of the tooltip ability. Bacchus channels a big ol' burp to deal damage repeatedly in front of you. Enemies hit by any tick of the burp have reduced healing. You're also displacement immune while channeling. This ability hits 4 times in 1.5 seconds, and the damage scales from your intelligence. If you're tipsy, then the final hit will also stun. Bacchus' fourth ability, Intoxicate. Smash your jug of wine, dealing damage and intoxicating enemies around you. Intoxicated enemies will have their vision impaired as well as lose control of their movement. If you're smashed, gain strength and intelligence in anger over your lost wine. The damage of this ability scales with your intelligence. Alright, coming into our first build for the guide is going to be a support build. We're going to start with Selflessness. Like always, support builds need a support starter item to keep up with gold. If you find yourself against a team who has absolutely no crowd control on their side, then you could go War Flag, but I would really recommend Selflessness. It is a great item. The utility that it gives for your team cannot be overstated. First item is going to be Prophetic Cloak, strictly better than Thebes only because it has cooldown rate, and Bacchus is a god who needs cooldown rate to do anything. Our second item is going to be Stone of Binding, 40 physical protections and 30 magical protections. Enemy gods hit by your hard CC effects lose 15 physical protections and 15 magical protections. With 2 out of 3 of your main abilities being hard crowd control abilities, Stone of Binding is going to be more useful the earlier you can build it. Our third item is going to be Eye of Providence, 25 physical protections, 25 magical protections, a passive that provides an additional 50 gold when destroying a ward that provides gold, and an active that creates a ward that reveals enemies and enemy wards within 10.4 meters for 120 seconds. The cooldown is 60 seconds, so you can actually have 2 wards out at any given time after the first initial 60 seconds where you start stacking them. The area that they cover is huge, and they act as sentry wards, so they'll let you destroy any wards in the area. This is a quick way for you as support to get additional gold to get ahead of the enemy. For our fourth item, we're going to build Ruinous Ankh, 40 physical protections and 40 magical protections, while also reducing the enemy's healing by 40% in 8.8 meter area around your player. Our fifth item is going to be a late game team cleanse. You could switch this out for Eye of Providence if you need an early cleanse item. Say if the enemy has like an Ares or some big team crowd control that you need to be responsible for cleansing, you could switch this out to third item. But Talisman of Purification, 45 magical protections, 200 max health, and 10 cooldown rate, with a beads active that cleanses you and all allied guides of CC and grants CC immunity. This item is staple on all support builds. You should try to fit it in somewhere in your build unless the enemy really lacks crowd control. Last item is going to be Spirit Robe, just a big luxury item, 60 protections, and a passive that'll make you tankier if you get hit by hard crowd control. For active, we're just going to build Shell. You could go Blink here, but that's more of an aggressive thing, and we'll talk about that in the solo section of this guide. For support, I would recommend that you try to focus your best on helping your team, instead of trying to be the focus of damage or the big impact player. You need to try to be supporting your teammates. For our solo build, we're going to start Bluestone Pendant and upgrade that to Bluestone's Brooch as soon as we can. Starting with 15 strength, 2 health regeneration, 2 mana regeneration, this item is going to make it to where you can participate in the lane clear instead of immediately losing. First item, considering that you're going up against a physical lane opponent, you're going to build Breastplate of Valor, 40 physical protections, 250 max mana, 2 mana regeneration, and 25 cooldown rate. We want to try to stack cooldown rate as fast as we can so that we can continue to proc our Bluestone. Second item, Genji's Guard, 45 magical protection, 300 max mana, 5 mana regen, 10 cooldown rate. When you take magical damage from abilities, your cooldowns are reduced by 3 seconds. This item is for if you are being rotated on by the mid. If you have a physical enemy jungler and the jungler is sitting your lane along with your lane opponent, then I would build Gladiator Shield before Genji's Guard and then go into Genji's Guard. So moving on to Genji's Guard, third or second item depending on your situation, 40 more additional physical protections, 150 max health, 10 cooldown rate, and a passive that will let you deal damage. Enemies hit by your abilities take 15 plus 25% of your item protections as bonus physical damage. Moving on to the fourth item, Void Stone, 40 intelligence, 45 magical protections, and 150 max health. Enemies within 8.8 meters have their magical protections reduced by 15%. You may be asking why we're building so much magical protection if our lane opponent is a physical damage dealer, and that's because solo laner's job is not to fight their lane opponent, it is to be ready for the late game, and in late game you will be fighting mages at some point. Moving on to our fifth item, Pharaoh's Curse. 40 physical protections and 40 magical protections, 15% attack speed, and I would say that this is a passive that is staple to the solo lane. Enemies within 5.6 meters are affected by 20% slow and have 20% reduced attack speed for 6 seconds. You don't make much use out of that attack speed, but you do make use out of the slow and the attack speed reduction, as well as it helping your team out. So in a late game team dive, this item is going to be helpful for your team, not just you. Our last item is going to be a luxury active item in Screeching Gargoyle, 60 magical protections, 20 cooldown rate, and an active that will give you an additional 2 seconds of crowd control. Enemy gods in front of you are silenced for 2 seconds and lose 25% magical and physical protections for 4 seconds. For an active item, we are going to be getting in there, so we're going to be building Blink. If they have a crowd control heavy comp, you could consider going beads, considering you have 0 crowd control immunity in your build. You do have a leap, and now with CC buffering, you can leap a little better, but it's not something that's super reliable. So if you are getting focused, or if you feel like you're going to be getting focused, I'd suggest getting beads. If you feel like a big strong burpee man, then get Blink Rune and decimate your enemies. And that concludes my mini guide for Bacchus, the God of Wine. If you found this guide helpful, please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment with any tips or builds you'd like to share, and subscribe to see more. I've been your host, Thysia, and I hope to see you all on the battleground of the gods.
You are my friend. あの日の夢今でもまだ忘れてないんでしょう